Good evening and welcome, everybody. I know we got a couple people that are still working on getting in through the registration line. While that's happening, just want to go over a couple more announcements for you as well. And I want to welcome our folks that are watching online. We've got some different groups here and there that are watching all over the world. So we are able to make this happen in a universal way tonight. A couple of announcements here. On your way out tonight, everybody will be getting an outline for tonight's presentation. And we want to give you enough tools that you don't have to worry and try to speed write everything. I'm going to be going over a lot of information. I'm going to do it very, very quickly. So you're welcome to keep notes if you want, but just know you are going to get a handout for tonight's presentation. Also on the way out, you're going to get a flyer for this presentation also. And we certainly want to give you an opportunity to invite any friends or family that may be interested in this as well. And I know some of you have signed up and we're excited about this, the Final Empire book. So if you have not received it yet, you will receive it on your way out. And that'll be here and at our satellite locations that are watching this if they have not been distributed yet. So if you've pre-registered, you get one of these books. And you know, we like giving stuff away here. I believe that the gospel should be given away and not sold. So if you did not pre-register and you're just hearing about this book, you'll want to make sure to register before you leave here this evening. And once you register, then we'll be able to put one of those books in your hand as well. Also, we will be holding a Bible study school in harmony with the presentations that you're hearing. So on the way out, if you would like to, this will not go out to anybody and everybody, only those that actually sign up for it. We're going to offer Bible study lessons that will just enhance your understanding of the Bible, and they will coincide with the message that's being presented as well. Over here off to the side here, there is a place where you can fill out a little index card. If you've got a Bible question, we want to give you opportunities to have your questions answered. I don't claim to know everything, but we've been doing this a little while, and we've been able to guide people towards the Bible to find answers to most questions that they're looking for. So over there, if you look over to your right over there, right by Jerry, there's a blue box right there. So afterwards, or if you think of a question, you can fill that out and submit that. Let me hand this off to my helper over here. Also, you know, I've been doing these seminars. By the way, my name is Brandon Sr. I've been doing seminars like this for about 15 years or so. My family and I, we get to travel the country, and we've done these from the East Coast to the West Coast and places in between. And we found that one thing is the same everywhere we go. People want to hear about the Bible. And I found out one good way to make friends with people also is to give away free stuff. So I have a Bible here, and this is a King James version of the Bible, and there are study helps in this as well. I want to give this away to somebody that's here tonight, and even at our satellite locations that are watching this, we have this available. Somebody will win this at one of those places tonight. I just want to ask a question here. Who here has driven more than 10 minutes to get to this seminar? Who has driven more than 20 minutes to get to these presentations? Who has driven more than 30 minutes to get here? 40 minutes? 50 minutes? 60 minutes? 70 minutes? Okay, I think we got a winner over here. And Gabriel, would you hand this Bible out over there? How far did you come? How many miles did you come to get here? Greensburg. Oh, okay. Well, you win. All right, so I think you'll appreciate that. You'll find in these seminars we like to go from the Bible and the Bible only. It's a good rule of thumb to go by, and we find that we're safe when we stick with that. I want to show you some upcoming topics. This is a continuing series. That's the way that we've advertised it. And you can even go to the website that many of you registered on, and it gives you the full list of topics that we'll be covering. Tonight's presentation is A New World Order. Many of you have heard about the One World Order, and is it going to take place? Do we find it in the Bible? How do we know? Well, that's what we're going to cover, that big topic tonight. Tomorrow night we're going to look at a planet in upheaval. How many of you here would say that things seem to be different on planet Earth? How many of you would agree that it's just not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Everywhere I go, people are saying that. And, I recognize that during these presentations, we have people from all different types of backgrounds here. We have very, very well-churched people, very, very biblically studied people. We also recognize that there are people that may have come here wondering, I don't even know if there's a God. We also know that there are some people that have only come here because your spouse dragged you here or your parents dragged you here. And we want to be sensitive to all of that. So here's a rule for my seminar. If it seems like I get a little bit too elementary, hang in there. It's going to get deeper, I promise. But if it seems like it gets so deep that it might be a little tough to understand, hang in there. It's going to get easier, I promise. I've got a wide range of histories here that we're going to look at. Anyway, on Sunday night, we're going to look at the subject of Armageddon. What is Armageddon? When will it happen? Did it happen already? Is it World War III? Is it going to take place somewhere in the Middle East? What on earth does it mean? That's what we're going to look at on Sunday night. Monday, we don't have a meeting Monday night. You get to take a break. That's when you get to do your laundry and do your lawn and rake your leaves. Maybe about time to be doing that. Tuesday night at 6:30. What time do these meetings start? 6:30. Yeah, you don't want to be late. Because we are streaming this to other groups, we have to be really sensitive to their time. So we've got to start these right at 6:30. Typically when I do these, I start every minute 5 minutes late the first one. We can't do that this time around because we've got to be sensitive to everybody's time. So we're going to be starting right at 6:30 every single night. And then on Wednesday, what time on Wednesday? 6:30, good class. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I guarantee you by the time that you leave here, you will leave here with a good, thorough understanding of these subjects. In fact, if there's one thing that people say when they leave this series, it's that they will have grown. Actually, I will tell you, most people say when they come to this series, they learn more during these presentations than they have oftentimes in their entire life of studying the Bible. And that's not because I'm a great speaker or anything like that. It's because we go by the Bible. I've found that you can't go wrong when you stick with the Bible. And if you haven't registered yet, you'll want to make sure to do that for a couple reasons. Number one, as Erica was explaining here during the announcements, we live in a very uncertain world, don't we? And if we need to make some abrupt change in the programming or scheduling, we need to be able to get that information to you quickly. And if something strange happens, I don't want a whole bunch of people showing up here and they didn't know that there was a change. So go ahead and register so we can contact you if we need to. And this series is Signs of the Second Coming. And we want to know, is Jesus coming? How is he going to come? We're going to grapple that throughout this entire presentation. But because I believe that we're talking about holy things tonight, I think it's appropriate that we just pause and ask the Lord's blessing on our time. Would it be okay if we pray together? Where possible, let's bow our heads, let's pray together. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this opportunity to come here, to study together. And God, we ask that as we open the pages of the Bible and we see the words on the screen, that it would be clear, that it would make sense. And we ask, God, that you would be here with us, that you would guide us and direct us. And in Jesus' name we ask it. Amen. All right, a new world order. What does it mean? Many people wonder, is there any meaning to my life? Is there any point or purpose to our existence? I did a study one time to find out what more people are worried about in the United States than anything else. And most people, the number one suffering thing is suffering anxiety. Many people wonder what is going on in this world. If the world is in this kind of a condition, what kind of a God would allow us to go through that? Many people wonder. Well, we're going to look through some history tonight. We got to lay the foundation. When you build a house, you don't start with the shingles. At least a good construction person doesn't start with the shingles. You got to start with the foundation and build up from there. So again, you're going to want to come to as many of these presentations as possible because they will build one on top of another, and it will make better and better sense as we continue. Let's go back through the pages of history here a little bit. Let's look at some amazing comparisons to the Duke of Wellington and Napoleon. Any of you ever read about the comparisons between JFK and Abraham Lincoln? Absolutely astounding. There we see kind of some similarities like that here. They were both mortal enemies who met at the Battle of Waterloo in June of 1815. And let's take a look at this here. They were both born in 1776, both of them born on an island. Both of them lost their fathers early in childhood, and they both had 3 sisters and 4 brothers. Isn't that interesting? Both of them had 3 sisters and 4 brothers. Both of them attended military school at France at the same time, and they both became lieutenant colonels within a day of each other. How many of you agree with me that that word should not be pronounced colonels? It should be pronounced colonels. But for the sake of sticking with the English language, we'll pronounce it colonels tonight. Both of them became lieutenant colonels within a day of each other. Both of them excelled in math. They were both very, very smart, very good at what they did. Both of them were great commanders over large armies, but only one of them won the war. And those of you that may know your history may know that Napoleon did not come up the winner of this war. So why did he lose? Is it because he wasn't big enough? Is it because he wasn't strong enough? Why on earth did he not win the war? Some historians and so on give some possible answers as to why this would happen. Why Wellington? Why not Napoleon? Well, some of them wonder if it wasn't because the geographical features of the battlefield favored Wellington. Well, depending on what kind of land and terrain you're in and marching through and used to, you may have an upper hand. Some say that the Prussian army joins up with Wellington. That gave him more strength, gave him more power. He was able to push through and win it more easily. Some say that Napoleon was just plain tired. He had been doing it a while. He had begun to be run down, and he was just worn out by this time. Are these things just a coincidence? What's the real answer here? Do you believe that there is a God that was guiding the events of history the entire time? Many people want to know. Are those the real reasons that he lost, as we mentioned, or is it all just coincidence? We are going to find our answers, believe it or not, 2,600 years ago in an ancient king's bedroom. We're going to travel all the way back to Babylon. It's important for us to understand what happened with Napoleon and Wellington. And it's important for us to understand that it has a foundation, believe it or not, right in Babylon. Babylon is mentioned 6 times in the book of Revelation. How many times is Babylon mentioned in Revelation? 6 times. So if we're going to understand Revelation, which we're going to get very deep into that book, and I guarantee you will understand much of that book by the time that we're done with this series. If we're going to understand what Babylon means in Revelation, we have to understand what Babylon meant in history. So we've got to go back 2,600 years. This is 600 years, long before Jesus is on the scene. And it starts like this. Here's what happened. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He had conquered Israel by this point. He had come in, ransacked, and destroyed Jerusalem. He had pulled out many of the people. He had killed many of the people. And he had taken some of them into Babylon to train them in the Chaldean courts and system. He was looking to enculturate and reprogram and condition these people. Nebuchadnezzar is sleeping one night, and he has a dream. And this dream that we're going to look at tonight sets the foundation for the entire series that we're looking at. So he's asleep one night, and he wakes up from this dream. He's panicking, his heart is pounding, his chest is beating, it's pumping, he's sweating, waking up in cold sweats. Did you ever have a dream like this? And I know some people, they get caught between awake and dream, And when you're kind of in that between, you cannot differentiate your dreams from reality, and it becomes mixed, and you don't even know what's going on. Nebuchadnezzar was having a dream very similar to this. Now, there is a difference between dreams. Most of the time when we have dreams, it is our brain just defragmenting what's gone on through the day. Most of the time it means, I tell you what it means most of the time. Most of the times it means we had too much pizza, too late at night, too close to bedtime. But sometimes it means something. In this case, Nebuchadnezzar, he wakes up and he knows that this was a very important dream that he had. So what happened? We're going to find our answers in the book of Daniel. Now, I will tell you, almost every single Bible verse will be on the screen for you tonight. But if you have a Bible handy, you're welcome to follow along. We'll be basically looking at Daniel chapter 2 tonight. Daniel chapter 2, verse 1. Now, in the second year of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. He couldn't go back to sleep after this. He knew it was something important. Maybe there were parts of it that he remembered, parts of it that he didn't. What's going on? So he calls for the wise men of Babylon, or as we're going to find out here, maybe the not-so-wise men of Babylon. And he sends the messenger, go get the wise men. I've had a dream, and I need to know what it means. Sir, can't that wait until the morning? It's the middle of the night. I had a dream, and I want to know what it means, and I want to know what it means right now. You go call the wise men. So he went out and he called the wise men. Now the wise men were sort of like the scientists of the day. They were the astrologers, the soothsayers, the magicians. In fact, that's where we get magic from. Magi, wise men, it comes from that same kind of concept right there. So he calls for the wise men and says, get in here right now. I've had a dream and I don't know what it means. I want you to tell me what it means. Daniel chapter 2, verses 2 through 4. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. He starts to tell them, listen, your life may be on the line depending on how you proceed with this. This may not be important to you, but it was important to me, and he's demanding answers. Then the Chaldeans, also known as the wise men, the Magi. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the king, and we will give you the interpretation. And at this point, the king starts to smell a rat. You know what? If you call me up at 2:30 in the morning, and you're panicking and breathing and say, I just had a dream, and I want you to tell me what it means. You know what I'm going to tell you? Anything I can to get you off the phone so I can get back to sleep. And that's exactly what they were trying to pull. King, it's late. You just tell us what the dream means, and guys, we can make something up, right? Yeah, we'll make something up. What does it mean? The king cannot afford bad intelligence. The king relies on these wise men. He knows this dream is important. He knows this means something to the future, and he can't afford for them to just make something up right now. So now they're called to the town. You see, they've been lying to the king for years. They know it. The king's starting to realize it. And eventually the lies will catch up to you. The king cannot afford the bad intelligence. Verses 5 and 6. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. However, if you tell me the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. My goodness. The king says, no, I want you to tell me what the dream is and what it means, or I'm going to kill you. I'm going to destroy your houses, and I'm going to wipe out your entire family also. Have you ever complained that your job is not challenging enough? These people knew they better come up with something quick. And they were faced with something maybe some of us have been faced with at times also. I've been living a lie, and I don't know if that's going to get me through it this time. I've been pulling the wool over his eyes for years, and it's not going to cut it anymore. Daniel chapter 2, verses 7 and 9. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you would gain time because you see that my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me, there is only one decree for you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. No more lies. No more trying to make something up. No more crossing your fingers behind your back. There's no way to get out of it this time. And there's nothing that they can say that will fix it, and they know it at this point. The Bible tells us something, though. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 39. For you alone know the hearts of all the sons of men. That ought to actually give us peace tonight. That means that there's a God in heaven, according to the Bible, and that's what we're going to go by during this series. According to the Bible, there is a God that knows the hearts of all the sons of men. That means whatever it is that keeps you up at night, God knows what that is. The thing that's on your mind that you cry yourself to sleep every single night, God knows what that is. But that also means that God knows what brings you joy as well. It means that God knows what brings you happiness. Now let's see what happened here. Daniel chapter 2, verse 11. For once in their life, they tell the truth. It's a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. They kind of got it wrong, but they kind of got it right. They knew nobody can get inside anybody else's head. The devil cannot even get inside your head. So many people come up to me and they ask me, some people are afraid to pray out loud because they're afraid that the devil's going to hear that prayer and they're going to twist it and distort it or not let it be answered. Some people are afraid to pray in their own private times on their knees because they're afraid the devil might get into their head and figure it out and God won't be able to answer that prayer. There's a God in heaven that knows. He knew what was in King Nebuchadnezzar's head, and he knows what's in our hearts as well. They admit it. It's a difficult thing. No one knows except the gods. They had that wrong part, but they knew that only divinity could answer that. Daniel chapter 2, verse 12. For this reason the king was angry and very furious. Was the king happy about this? He was very furious and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. That's it. You can't help me. You've been lying to me. Have them destroyed, every single one of them. But let me tell you about Daniel. Let's pause here with Nebuchadnezzar and the not-so-wise men for a little bit. He calls for the destruction of all the wise men at this point, and on the staff of the wise men are Daniel, of whom the book is named after. And he had 3 very close friends that he was working with as well. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They're on the king's payroll now as wise men. In Daniel chapter 1, they were found to be wisest of the wise. And they were promoted. Now they're on staff. Now there's a problem. Makes you wonder why Daniel wasn't called in with the rest of them, doesn't it? We might answer that on another night. Daniel was not Babylonian, so there might even be some prejudice there. Hey, why don't you call in my people, my wise men, not this foreigner? Remember, King Nebuchadnezzar, he came in and ransacked and destroyed Jerusalem. God's people had started to disobey. They had started to turn to idolatry. They had brought unclean things into the temple worship. And God tried to warn them. He tried to plead with them. They didn't want to hear it. The only choice God had left then was judgment. And he allowed King Nebuchadnezzar to come in and destroy Jerusalem. But he took some people out. Daniel was one of those people. He was a Hebrew that was taken captive. He was actually a member of the royal family. Makes you wonder why he kept him alive. There's some good breeding here, he's thinking. So he was put on a special retraining program to help enculturate other Hebrew captives. If we can win Daniel over, if we can get him to change over, then maybe he can help us with the rest of them. Imagine you're Daniel. And he's like a boy at this point. This is not the old man hunched over the desk with the long white beard and long hair. This is a young man at this point. He's just been taken from his entire family, and he's made this long trek across the journey a few years earlier. He's lost everything except for some of his friends that were taken with him. God used people that have lost things. You better believe it. Put on a special retraining program. And even Daniel must die with the other wise men. Sin is contagious. Sin affects other people. And as we go through this series, it is not my intention to only show you some dates and understand some Bible prophecies, but it's my hope that we come into a stronger relationship with Jesus through this entire series as well. Daniel is called to task. You're going to die with the rest of them. Daniel says, wait a second. Take me to the king. No, he told me that we've got to destroy. Take me to the king. And for some reason, the guard, the messenger, listens to him. He takes him back to the king. And the king says this, Daniel chapter 2, verse 16. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time that he might tell the king the interpretation. Listen, Nebuchadnezzar, king, if you kill me, you're never going to find an answer out anyway. You might as well give me time. And he does. You remember the other wise men asked for time, and he said, no, that's it. I'm going to kill you. Daniel asked for time, and he listens to him. Why? There's something about Daniel's character. The devil works so hard to destroy our character. Character is a short commodity these days. It is these days, and it was back then. Something impressed him to give Daniel time. So what does Daniel do? Imagine you're Daniel. Your life is on the line. You know very well that he will execute you and everybody you know and lay waste to your household and everything. There's no question about that. Imagine you're Daniel. Your life is on the line. You have no hope. There's nothing in and of yourself you can do to fix this problem. Anybody ever felt like that? How about over the past year and a half, 2 years, as we've been dealing with this pandemic and the chaos that has been ensuing around everything else that's encircling it? Do you ever feel helpless? Daniel felt a little bit helpless. So what is it that he did? He grabbed his 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They got together. He grabbed like-minded people. They dropped to their knees and they prayed. Now, you may know their names as something different. You may be a little more familiar with them as Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Interesting thing, in Daniel chapter 2, it deals with true worship to God. In Daniel chapter 3, it deals with false worship. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah is their Hebrew names. It had to do with their relationship with God. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego are their Babylonian names. They wanted to change their character, change their name, change everything about them, wipe away their association relation with God. Does God answer the prayer? Daniel 2, verses 27 and 28. Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. You tell me, who is it that can reveal secrets? According to the Bible, it's God. There's a God in heaven that can reveal secrets. This would have been a good time for him to come and say, hey, look what I've done. Look what we've come up with. But he doesn't do that. He gives all the credit to God. And he has made known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the, what does it say right here? In the latter days. Some of you have been wondering, where on earth is he going with this? Talking about Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar. Now it starts to come into focus a little bit. This dream has to deal with the latter days. And how many of you have wondered recently if we're living in the latter days? Are we living in the final hours of Earth's history? Made known what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. And he starts to explain it. King Nebuchadnezzar, I'm going to tell you what God revealed to me that you saw. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, when it says great image there, I think the King James Version says awesome or terrible image. This thing was enormous. In his dream, he sees this enormous image, this great image whose splendor was excellent, and it stood before you. Is that right, Nebuchadnezzar? That's right. Keep on going. And its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. So we're talking about this image here. Some of you have wondered, why on earth does he have an idol right here? We're not dealing with idolatry tonight. This is the image that King Nebuchadnezzar saw. But that's not it, is it, King Nebuchadnezzar? You also saw a rock, a stone that was cut without hands, which struck the image. Is that what you saw? That's exactly what I saw. Keep on going. And it hit its feet of iron and clay and broke them to pieces. Now, notice this right here. In Daniel chapter 2, verse 34, you watched while a stone was cut out without hands. Tuck that behind one ear for right now. That is very, very important. One of the most important pieces of this entire dream is this rock. Why is it cut without hands? What does it mean? Why is it hitting the statue? Why is it destroying everything? Daniel 2:34, on his feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Verse 35, then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. King Nebuchadnezzar, can I call you Nebi? No. King Nebuchadnezzar then. Is that what you saw? That's exactly what I saw. Now what on earth does it mean? Now he begins to understand that maybe there is something between Daniel and this God that he keeps talking about. What does it mean? As we study through the Bible, there are some rules that we're going to lay down through this series as we study together. Number one is you have to read the whole thing. You've got to read, and some of you are saying, but the whole thing, that's a big Bible. Let me show you my Bible right here. I was at the dentist one time, and the dental hygienist comes in. I was reading my Bible, and I had it open, and she looked at me reading the Bible, and she said, oh, that's a good book. I read that once. I said, did you? You read it once. I said, I found that, the Bible says it's the living word. I found that if I keep reading it, it begins to be a lot more meaningful and make more sense. You've got to read the whole thing. You can't take one little piece out of it and make it think that it means something else out in the news and then think you're going to have a clear understanding of it. You've got to read the whole thing, and I think that's where a lot of the confusion takes place. So many of us get stuck in the novels and the movies, and we forget that the Bible is right there for us. Number two, we have to let the Bible interpret itself. It does a really, really good job at it. We don't have to guess what the image means or what it is. The Bible tells us. Let's take a look here. Some people say, well, the head of gold. Well, that must mean Fort Knox because that's where all the gold is kept, right? No, that's not what it means. Chest and arms of silver. Oh, well, that must be the mountains and the silver mines. Is that what it means? Absolutely not. Let's let the Bible tell us what it means. Daniel chapter 2, verse 37. You, O king, are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. King Nebuchadnezzar, everything that you have is because God gave it to you. He had the tendency to become a little bit arrogant. He has been very successful. He has amassed this mighty empire, and that could make someone start to think that they did it all on their own. Daniel tells him everything that you've got is from God. Daniel 2:37, you, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of heaven, he has given them into your hands, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. We don't have to guess what the head of gold is. The Bible tells us that Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold. Now, is it Nebuchadnezzar the person, or is it Nebuchadnezzar the empire? Think of it like this. When the Queen of England comes over to the United States, she doesn't represent herself. She represents all of England. Here, Daniel is saying, you, Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold. It's your kingdom. And it was known for gold. Babylon ruled the then known world over the territory of God's people from about 605 to about 539 BC. They had gold on their walls. They had gold streets. Everything about this city was gold, and they knew it. So Nebuchadnezzar, hearing this, it all starts to click and make sense to him. Let's take a look a little bit about this. And I have it in quotes here. Here are some gifts from Babylon. In other words, there are some vestiges of Babylon that we still have even in our culture today. Horoscope, astrology, all that stuff comes from ancient pagan Babylonian worship. They also gave us the sexadecimal system. What on earth does that mean? goes all the way back to Babylon. 360 degrees in a circle, goes back to Babylon. 60 seconds in a minute, goes all the way back to Babylon. 60 minutes in an hour, where does it come from? Babylon. How about 6 sides on a die? That goes back to Babylon. 6 was their magical, mystical number. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he's hearing this, gold, it's going to last forever, isn't it? Well, hang in there. Daniel chapter 2, verse 39. But after you, Nebuchadnezzar, shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. And he probably started to get a little bit hot under the collar by this point. Wait a second, something else is going to come after me? I thought I was going to last forever. No, it's going to be another kingdom after you. And those of you that study world history, anybody know who the chest and arms of silver represent? Who was the next world ruling power over the area of God's people right after Babylon? It was none other than the Persian Empire. More specifically, it was the Medo-Persians. It was a coalition government, and they ruled the world from 539 to 331 BC. Each one of these metals is very specific, and you got the head of gold. Everything in Babylon was gold. You've got the chest and arms of silver. Take a wild guess what kind of metal Persia collected their taxes in. Silver. Everything is specific in here. God, with his symbolism in the Bible, is very specific. Let's talk about the walls of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar's thinking, but wait a second, this fortress is impenetrable. We've got triple line walls. People may break through one wall. They're never going to break through all 3 of them before we get to them and kill them. They were too high to climb, too thick to smash through. This was an impenetrable, an impregnable fortress, and he knew it. Except one night, the king got a little bit arrogant, and they decided to, actually it was the king's grandson is who it was, and they were having this wild party, and it was a blasphemous party. They had even taken some of the sacred vessels from the sanctuary, the Hebrew sanctuary, and they were filling it and using it to their pleasure. And outside was camped Cyrus the king. He got upset. The story goes that he was marching his horse through the river and something went wrong. The horse drowned. He died. And he said, that's it. Nobody's ever going to get hurt by this water again. So he had his men go up and divert the entire river. And what he noticed was a virtual highway under the gates of the city. You see, there were the gates of the city and the water was up to it, except when he diverted the river, the water went down, and they marched in and took Babylon in one night without battle. Daniel chapter 2, verse 39. Then a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And who is it that would follow the Medo-Persian Empire? Who was the kingdom that defeated the Persians at the Battle of Arbela in 331 BC? Anybody know? Anybody want to take a guess? It is the Greeks. The Greece, thighs of bronze. They were known as the Brazen Greek Army. And it's very interesting that God picked the metals that he did for this. They ruled the world from about 331 to 168 BC. And we still have, the Greek influence is seen all over the world, even still to this day, but the Greek armies are not. It's what's called Hellenization, trying to force people into Greek way of thinking. Greek philosophy still runs through much of the world, but the Greek army does not. What happened? There was a man by the name of Alexander the Great. You know, to get a title by the name of the Great, you must have done something pretty important. By his early 30s, he had conquered the then known world. Every time I read this, I think, man, I didn't achieve that much by my early 30s. By his early 30s, conquered the entire then known world. And the story goes, by the time he conquered it all, he got a little bit upset and depressed. What? That's it? There's no more challenge? That's it? Story goes that he drank himself to death. He could conquer the entire world, but he could not conquer himself. He could not conquer his own problems. Daniel chapter 2, verse 40. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Who defeated the Greeks at the Battle of Pydna in 168 BC? Anybody want to take a guess there? There you go. It's the Romans. This is the time period that Jesus was born into. Rome ruled the world from about 168 to 476 AD. And the description is absolutely perfect. They will come in and they will crush and they will destroy. That's exactly what the Romans did. They didn't just come over and take over some houses. They would absolutely obliterate and destroy anything in their path. Perfect description of it. In fact, Edward Gibbon, a historian, he picked up on the fact that these metals seem to be very, very specific. Look what he says. The images of gold, silver, or brass that might serve to represent the nations and their kings were successively broken by the iron monarchy of Rome. Now, this is not necessarily a theologian talking. This is history telling us the symbolism is accurate. Daniel chapter 2, verse 41. Whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so shall the kingdom be partly strong and partly fragile. You'll notice that there are elements of Rome, even down into the feet, of iron mixed with clay. Going to be partly strong, partly fragile. What on earth does it mean? Rome fell in, it was not overtaken by one ruling power, but it was taken over by 10 tribes. Now, unless you've had some accident with the rototiller, how many toes do you have? 10. One of these, I'm actually nervous about doing this seminar. Sometimes somebody's going to yell, well, I have like 8 or 9 toes, and I'm not going to know what to say. Did talk to someone one time. They said, I have 12 toes. I said, you do not. You said, yes, I do. And I said, well, I'm sorry, you probably have a tough time getting shoes. So unless you've been born with extra toes, let's say you got quasi-normal feet, you've got 10 toes. The statue had 10 toes. Rome fell not over one kingdom, but 10 of them. How did it fall? And here's the thing, Rome sort of fell in on itself. Have you ever heard the phrase, those that fail to study their history are condemned to repeat it? A lot of truth in that. They became arrogant. There were problems inside. They thought they were unstoppable, and it started to crumble. What were they fighting up against? They were fighting against people that had nothing to lose. They were fighting against the barbarian tribes that as they're going into battle, they would ride 3 days into battle. They get a little bit hungry. They hop off their horse. They slit the neck of the horse, drink up till they're full, stitch it back up, hop on, and keep on riding. You don't win against people like that. You don't win against someone that has nothing to lose. And it divided into 10, not 8, not 11, 10. And they were these, the Anglo-Saxons. They eventually became the British. You have the Franks, which eventually became the French. The Suevi became the Portuguese. The Visigoths became Spanish. The Burgundies became Switzerland. And the Alemanni eventually became the Germans. The Lombards became the Italians. That one kind of makes sense. You put an I on the end, Lombardi, kind of sounds Italian, I don't know. The Lombards became the Italians. But then there's the Ostrogoths, the Heruli, and the Vandals. They have been wiped out. And why? What happened to them? Well, you keep coming to this Bible prophecy seminar, and it is very key to understanding where we are today as what happened to these 3 tribes. We're not going to address that tonight. We don't have time, but you keep coming. We're going to get it. Fell in on 10. How did it happen? Daniel chapter 2, verse 43. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men. There would be an intermarrying that would be attempted to try to unify and unite this kingdom. Daniel 2:43, but they will not adhere one to another. Are they going to adhere one to another, yes or no? No, it's never going to happen. Not going to happen according to the Bible, just as iron does not mix with clay. So they divided, they weren't able to come back together. And you know how in the old storybooks, and you see it on the movies, the king tries to marry the princess off to the prince of another land, and to unite the kingdom. They actually did that. In fact, they did it so much, fulfilling Bible prophecy, that they shall mingle with the seed of men, that at one point, Queen Victoria was known as the grandmother of Europe because she was related to every other head of state at the time. Fulfilling Bible prophecy. Charlemagne, he thought maybe he could do it. I'm tired of this divided kingdom. I want more power. I'm going to put it back together. He was known as the father of Europe. He was the king of France, the Franks rather, in 768. And then in 774, he became the king of Italy. And the empire all fell apart. Why did it fall apart? Because it wasn't big enough? Because he wasn't strong enough? It fell apart because God said it would not happen. They would not cleave one to another. How about Charles V? Maybe he could do it. At one point, he was the Holy Roman Emperor in 1519. He expanded his empire to 1.5 million square miles. And it looked like he was almost going to do it. Then he starts to get sick. He suffers with gout, and then he dies from malaria. Why couldn't he do it? Why couldn't those underneath him continue what he started? Because he was trying to do something that God said could not, would not be done. Louis XIV, how about him? He's known as the Sun King. He was an arrogant king. He really was. He said, I don't rule the state, I am the state. He started the War of the Spanish Succession. And there were so many people that got involved in this war, that there were so many big, strong men that they sent to war, that it's believed that the average Frenchman to this day is 2 inches shorter as a result of that, because so many of their big, strong men died off. Napoleon, if anybody could do it, surely Napoleon could do it. That guy had some drive to him. He was almost crowned Emperor of Europe. Well, how was he almost crowned? He was almost crowned Emperor of Europe, but the story goes that as he was getting ready to be crowned, he took the crown, put it on his own head, and that ended that. In the year 1812, he lost 500 of the 600,000 men. Of 600,000 men, he lost 500,000 of them who marched in Europe during a Russian winter. What happened? He was doing what God said could not be done. And so God sent some snowflakes as they were marching through Russia. And then he sent a little bit more, and the temperature began to drop. And as a result of that, 500,000 of his men died, and he lost the battle at Waterloo. Why? Because he wasn't big enough? Because he wasn't smart enough? Because he wasn't strong enough? Because he was doing something that God said could not be done. How about Kaiser Wilhelm? Couldn't he do it? Surely he could do it. We get into World War I, and the United States wanted to stay out of it for a little bit. But then there was something called the Zimmerman telegram. It was intercepted, and then it looked like there was going to be an invasion in the United States, and the president says, fine, let's go stop it before it happens. The United States gets involved, and that was that. Adolf Hitler. You almost get chills in your spine when you see a picture of this guy, don't you? Well, if there was a heinous person on earth, he would be it. Well, there was one young man, one young soldier in the Kaiser's army, a man by the name of Adolf Hitler. Like many of the people, he was ashamed of what took place in World War I. And he said, if anybody's going to do it, I'm going to do it. It's said that the story goes like this. Because he was trying to do what God said shouldn't be done, the story is told that somebody took him the Bible passage in Daniel chapter 2, the very thing that we're studying tonight. They took it to him, opened it up, and said, I don't think that we're going to pull this thing off. Why? What do you mean? Well, you see, I've been reading the Bible here, and it seems like it's not going to happen. And he penned this letter. See, my people, we do not need anything from God. We do not ask him for anything except that he may let us alone. We want to fight our own war with our own guns without God. We want to gain our victory without the help of God. Not only was he trying to do what God said couldn't be done, but he was doing it arrogantly. It's as a slap in the face to God. And we all know how that ended. Ended up shooting himself in a bunker somewhere. How about communism? Surely they could do it. It failed then, and it's not going to succeed. Every time communism is attempted, it fails every single time. The only way communism could be successful is if they were able to put the tentacles throughout the entire world. It couldn't happen then. How about the European Union? Do you ever notice any time there's something that is attempted to unite Europe? Even the euro dollar, not everybody's even on the euro dollar because they can't all agree. And why? Because God said it won't happen. The European Union will never be a one world power. It's never going to happen. Daniel chapter 2, verse 44. In the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Remember, there's another part of that statue. We've got the statue here. We've got the head of gold. What did the head of gold represent? Let me test you now. Babylon. We've got the chest and arms of silver. What did that represent? Persia. We've got the belly and thighs of brass. Anybody remember that one? The brazen Greeks, the legs of iron, which represent Rome. And then we've got the feet of iron mixed with clay. And every single one of them has come and gone just as Bible prophecy has predicted. But there's one more part. Remember, there's that rock that was cut specifically without human hands that comes, strikes the image at the feet, destroys it, obliterates it. In the days of these kings, the 10 toes, remember, divided Western European Empire, in those times, the God of heaven is going to set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. All of these kingdoms came and went. It's not going to happen. They're not going to stick around forever, but there is a kingdom that's coming that will last forever. The Bible's been right the entire time. I think it's probably going to be right this next time, too. Daniel 2:44 continues, "And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." How many of you are looking forward to Jesus coming back? How many of you are tired of world governments doing the things that they do? How many of you are tired of the lies and the politics, and you can't trust anybody or anything anymore? And there's got to be an end to it. Jesus is coming. He's going to put an end to it. Matthew 25:31. "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him." Who's coming back with Jesus? Holy angels. How many of them? The Bible says every single one of them. We're going to have a whole study on the actual return of Jesus. How do we know it's him? What signs should we look for? We're going to have a whole study on that. It's going to be a good one. "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory." Man, I can't wait for that day. The rock that comes is Jesus. In this statue, I used to preach that we're down into the toenails of this statue. I don't teach that anymore. It feels like we're down all the way into the foot fungus of this statue now. There's not a whole lot left to be fulfilled in this particular prophecy other than the return of Jesus. How many of you are looking forward to that? Man, I can't wait. I can't wait. I really hope you continue coming to these presentations. We're going to get deeper and deeper as we go. And just a couple of announcements before we close out here today. And for you local folks, stick around for one or two announcements before I sign off. Don't forget to pick up your book on the way out. Don't forget to sign up for the Bible studies. Don't forget to get your handout. And let's have a word of prayer. We'll sign off for the camera, but don't get up yet. One or two quick announcements for us local folks right here. Let's bow our heads and pray. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the Bible. We thank you for the hope that it offers. And we see how accurate you have been time after time after time, prophecy after prophecy. And we ask that you would help us to put our hope in you. In Jesus' name, amen. You know, just as I was in my prayer there, I realized I left out a big part of the big right hook. How could I do that? Have you ever wondered what happened to King Nebuchadnezzar? He's hearing all this, but what on earth happened to him? In Daniel chapter 2, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way because I even forgot to put it on the screen here. At the end of the prophecy in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel says this, the king says this. "The king answered Daniel and said, 'Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and the revealer of secrets,' since you could reveal this secret." If Nebuchadnezzar could start to get it, we can start to get it. And he didn't get it all the way because in Daniel chapter 3, he forces people to worship him. In Daniel chapter 4, he loses his marbles for a little bit before he gives his attention to God. Let me give you just one more piece of background on Nebuchadnezzar. When he took the people out of Jerusalem, when he ransacked and destroyed it, he took the leaders out of Jerusalem, made them watch him kill their family, and then he burned their eyeballs out with a hot poker. This is the kind of guy that you're dealing with. This is the kind of guy that he gets what he wants when he wants, and he's not afraid to do anything. But here, after hearing this prophecy, he starts to be inclined towards God. He acknowledges your God is a God of God and King of kings. I want to thank those that have been watching online with us tonight. We'll sign off now. Thank you and God bless. Those of you that are sticking around, just one or two quick announcements. Because of the nature of how we had to rent